Hello everyone, this is art journaling in simple steps. We're doing acrylic paint again. Because acrylic paint does so many different things, I just want to show you what it can do, what you can do, how much fun it can be. And acrylic paint is kind of like glue, so if you've got wet paint, you don't want to close your pages, it will glue together. I did this one last time and I had wax paper under the pages, but still I've got a little bit of gray paint on the edges. I used the brush and a little bit, of the brush kind of got some of the edges. So it's not foolproof. If you can be just a little bit more careful if that's going to bother you. I just wanted to point that out. It's not, it isn't foolproof. So it does happen, and other things do happen as well. I noticed that, I think it was this one. Sorry, guys. What did we do? We did the wash, and it did seep through the center of, I want to say, yeah, it seeped through the center of the signature. So it came through. There was so much water to it, it just kind of ran. Again, you can fix this. You can put tape in your creases so that the paint doesn't run underneath the paper. It's not going to bother me very much. I can paint over that if I really don't like the way that the color is added. I can add more paint and cover that up. So just wanted you to be aware, it's not an exact science. Things happen. Paint goes places that you don't necessarily want it to go. All right, so we'd used a credit card before, and I wanted to do a couple more things with credit cards. I wanted to show scraping with a credit card again. What kind of color? Maybe I should just scrape some paint on this one. Yeah, I'll do that. Maybe a little bit of this color. Shaking my paint so just in case it's separated. And I'm just going to put a little bit of paint on the edge of my credit card here and scrape the paint on that way. Again, I probably pushed a little bit of that paint underneath the signature there, the paper there, so there might be a little bit of that paint on one of the other pages. I'm not too worried about it. And another thing that I like to do, if I put a little bit of paint on a palette, that's a little bit more than I wanted, and dip the edge of the credit card, just the edge, I can make paint lines. Get the paint all the way across that. I think that's kind of fun. I do really like to do that. And now that it's kind of thick, so let me see if I can find my little comb. I hadn't planned on this, but I didn't realize that it was going to be so thick. I don't see it. Darn. Here's a little toy. All right, this toy will work. I usually use a comb for this. Not that I can find my comb. I think the comb would be more... Anyway, so it's got a little bit of like a comb-like thing. It's got some forks to it. A comb is just a little bit more fine, and you can drag that through lines of paint to kind of spread it around a little bit and make it more fun. Just wanted to show that since it was so thick right there. All right, that's a credit card. And another thing that you can do with paint, scraping it, is using a palette knife. Let me get this out of the way. I wanted to use this one. A palette knife is the same kind of thing as a credit card, but you get more control about where you put the paint. So I'm going to put a little bit of this on my palette. Oops, again, a little bit more than I wanted. And a little bit of this one, I think, too. Pretty close to the same color. I didn't want anything really crazy going on here. So I can pick up a little bit of that paint and scrape it where I want it with a palette knife. I can scrape it pretty thin like I can a credit card, but I have a smaller surface, so I can kind of direct it more to where I want the paint to be. And I should have the wax paper underneath this page. You can also dip the palette knife and just press the paint in with the palette knife. If you let it dry that way, it will be really thick. It takes a while to dry though. It'll be really thick and it kind of is an interesting texture, kind of a dendritic texture there. So I'm just going to leave it like that. I want to paint a little bit more down, add some color down here. Since I'm adding the color now, and around that image just a little bit. I can kind of paint with the palette knife and put the paint where I really want it. It's a little bit more accurate than a credit card. Maybe just a little bit more down here. So that's adding some color to that page. Okay, and I'm going to let that dry. So a palette knife is really kind of nice. All right. Another thing that I like to do is use a chopstick. I've said this before. I don't do it enough. It's a lot of fun. I take the lid off the bottle of paint after I shake it and dip my paint or my chopstick or the end of a paintbrush. You don't have to have a chopstick, any kind of stick. Don't want too much of that paint. I just want some on my stick. And then I can rub that paint off the stick and add some color that way. Kind of paint with it and add some scribble lines if you can get enough paint on just the very end. This can be kind of fun just to scribble with paint. Let me get the paint off of it here. Maybe just a little bit more over here. Anyway, you get the idea. Scribbling with paint some kind of stick, paintbrush, anything. It can be fun. Scribble with paint with reckless abandon and not worry too much about it. Okay, so I'm going to put the lid back on my paint before I spill it. Chopsticks. They're not just for eating. And the last one that I wanted to show, and I think I can do it on this page, is getting a piece of, what did I do with it? Piece of plastic. This is, I think it came off of a stencil or something. It's just some kind of plastic packaging. And I am going to, got orange here. Let me add a different, well, actually I can add some of this paint. I am just going to put the paint on the plastic in various ways. And before it dries, I am going to burnish the plastic to my page. This is a good way to use up paint off of a palette. And you've got something left over, just lay it down and use it like that. It gives kind of a random kind of pattern, whatever you've done. And another thing that you can do is, let me use a little bit of this. Let me use a dark red. That sounds interesting. A little bit of dark red on this page. And I'm going to spread it out. You can do the same thing with paper. It does dry on paper just a little bit faster. But if you've got too much paint on your page, you might think about getting another piece of paper and just taking some of that paint off with the paper, or doing it the other way around. It thins out the paint. If I had too much paint here, let me use some of this. Too much paint, and I didn't want quite that much paint, I could use this paper and take some of that off. Thin it out just a little bit. So, burnishing with paper or burnishing with plastic. And it just adds a little bit of color to your page. Some fun stuff. So I will be adding some more images to this page. And I think that's all I wanted to do today. Thanks for watching.